Hi, welcome to Wicked Education. My name is Christine. I'm one of the co-founders for Wicked Education. So it stands for Wish You Knew Education, and where our mission is to try and help students better understand and get educated on various career paths and what to do in terms of where to go from your education level. So today's topic is a not highly mode, but very popular topic. And I think it's a lot of times people have these questions but don't ask out and are in this very similar situation. And so it's about medical school and what to do if you don't get into medical school. So I have a really wonderful, really amazing person who has accomplished so much. And she had an aspiration for medical school, but has now changed gears. And so I want to introduce you to Linda Dao.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Linda Dao, and as Christine said, medical school was my aspiration, but a lot of things change over time as a person grows. So I'm here to hopefully give you some insights into what you can do if medical school doesn't work out for you, or if you're deciding to change gears just as much.
All right. So I guess we'll start with the first question: is how did you prepare for medical school rejections when you did end up getting that?
Of course. So let's start with just to give the audience a little bit of understanding with my background and how I started to the path of medicine and then pivoted away from it. So in my undergraduate years of study, I looked into um, trying to find a way to bring together space and health. Or in this case, I was studying biochemistry, and I knew that I wanted to apply for medical school, but my ultimate dream was to become a flight surgeon, which is a really cool term for a physician for astronauts and spaceflight explorers in space. And so my first attempt actually through medical school applications did end up in a rejection. And I figured at the time that my MCAT score was perhaps too low. So I thought, okay, maybe I can try again. I have another year of undergraduate studies to take the time to restudy for the MCAT, improve my own personal profile, and see where that gets me. And so in my second attempt, unfortunately, there was another rejection letter that I received, or a few rejection letters, depending on the number of schools that I applied to. And at that point, I thought, okay, well, I did improve my MCAT score to a competitive level, but maybe my GPA was low. It's between the low interval of the actual competitive range. And so I thought, okay, so my MCAT is improved. Maybe I need to improve my GPA, but maybe there's something else that I need to work on to build that profile. And so I tried again, but this time this was beyond graduation. I had decided that I wanted to apply within a few years. So this was when I started working that I decided, maybe I would like to try again for medical school. And so I put all my eggs in one basket. I applied, and to my, I wouldn't say disappointment, but I guess at this point it was expectation. I did receive another rejection, but I did receive feedback from that letter, and I was actually really close. And that gave me the indication that it wasn't my profile that was causing the rejection. It was the fact that the competition had increased the year that I applied, and I did not make the cut. So, in realizing that, I figured there's a lot that goes into a medical school rejection than just figuring out whether you're good enough. And so, to your question, Christine, about how do you actually prepare for a medical school rejection, frankly speaking, this question to me is quite a challenging one, not really to answer, but really to reflect about. And as a former student who applied to medical school more than once, I know exactly how it feels to be in that boat. And I'm sure you know exactly how it feels to be in that stage of the process when you were applying to dentistry. You're putting all your hardest efforts in formulating the best application of your life. You're putting 110% of your dedication to it, getting it reviewed and reviewed and then reviewed again and then again by the same people, by different people, by people you hardly reach out to. You're asking for their help. So you aren't really thinking about what you're going to do if it fails, you're thinking you need to succeed, and you're really hoping you get in, only you're also fearing at the back of your mind what will happen if you don't get in. And this fear is what I really want to hone in on, because a lot of students, what they do is that they they try so hard to put in all this effort to make their application the best, but they forget to put in the effort to try to reduce the fear of what will happen if they don't get in. And one way to easily address that is to effectively come up with other options. And I'm not talking about plan A, plan B, or like plan C or D. I'm talking about A to Z until you cannot list any more options. The idea of coming up with options here is not about the quality, but or the feasibility. It's more about the quantity. It's similar to design thinking, where the first step is, you want to come up with as many ideas as possible, and then from there scoot it down to those that actually apply to you and things that you can work on. And so starting with that first step, when you develop such a list of these options, not only will you feel less stuck that plan A, which is medical school, has to work out or else you become lost, but you can truly start to see what your passions are, where you want to go, where your skills can be a strength in what you do, and then go for it. And these plans will truly identify what you like, what you're open to exploring, what availabilities are within your reach. And then, even though there are many different options from plan A to Z, you can start to fit in the similarities between, or the commonalities between each of those options into the one that you want to go with. And so, I'll give an example of what I did for medical school. Medical school obviously was my first option, but it wasn't my only option. For me, I know that I'm interested in space. And so what I did was I used that side interest at the time to say, okay, if healthcare or medical school doesn't work, then perhaps I can try to work a little bit more on the space side. And so I applied to my master's at the space school called the International Space University, where I could learn more about space and how it applies to medicine. And so there, I learned more about the field of space medicine, putting it together. And right now, I'm still progressing in that pathway as I continue in my career as a project officer in operational space medicine at the Canadian Space Agency. So, I mean, it's not exactly the way I pictured how things would go forward towards my path of becoming a flight surgeon. And that's not the end of my path. It's more just the in between. And I'll give a quote that Chris Hadfield once had said. He said, and I'm sure this quote has definitely been used by other people many times. It's the idea that you have a goal, but don't let that goal be your end finale. It's the journey along the way that really matters. And even though being a flight surgeon can be perceived as an end goal, it's actually part of the journey for me to do what I want to do along the way. So, plan B was applying to my master's, and I did that. Plan C was trying to get a career in space medicine, and then at the time move forward from there. I did, however, had other plans in mind, such as pursuing a master's in physiotherapy, pursuing a master's with a professor at a different school in space health science experiments that would be done on the International Space Station. And the other plan was to go into pharmacy. So a lot of them were a little bit out of scope from what exactly I wanted to do, but they were in the same, I guess, context of space and medicine. Um, and so the idea is all these plans don't exactly need to be comprehensive when you start listing them. At the time I wasn't thinking about how life in the pharmaceutical industry would be or where that could potentially take me. It was just an option. Physiotherapy was just an option, and that would be considered if it came to that option. All I had in mind were those options and that I prepared for, that I knew that I was going to be okay in. And just like when it comes to applying to universities, the more ideas, the better. The more universities you apply to, the better. So to summarize, really draft out the list of options and keep going until you run out of ideas. If you do run out of ideas, because as you continue your path, you will have new ideas, and those options will spring up new ideas. And so, really talk to people to identify other pathways that they are aware of that you can potentially step into, that you can bring your background and skill sets into, and try to not limit yourself to the field of view based on your background studies. And that is, it's quite difficult to do, especially as an undergraduate student, where you're surrounded by all your courses which are within the same subject, and also classmates within the same subject and field of expertise as you are. But if you are a STEM student, so science, technology, engineering, or math, one of those, and you have an option, for example, of going into business, talk to a business colleague, talk to other peers, and write it down. See if there's a possibility for you to step into that field and see where your value can be put to use. Um, Also, there is the option of applying to medical school again. So, even though you're coming up with all these side options, if medical school doesn't work out and you want to apply again, do it. Just make sure that along the way you are not stopping to do what you want to do. Rather, you're continuing it through those mechanisms of other options, and you continue on the path that you're setting your mind to, and from there you'll be able to reach your goals, even though the goal might not be what you had expected it to look like in the first place.
I really, really like that. The fact about exploring different options, and like figuring out your passions, and really, like you're saying, right? Figuring out your different interests and exploring and going further, deep. I guess like deep diving into those interests.
Exactly.
I guess like at what point did you start that, or like what point do you recommend people start that journey? Like, do they do it before they even apply to medical school, or do you do it after they tried once and they failed? Like, what do you suggest?
In retrospect, it's hard for me to tell students to start as early as possible, because students often have a goal in mind, and they'll aim for it, and then they'll focus on that goal. It's sort of like just a tunnel vision, right? And it's really hard to recommend to students to think about these other pathways and options, because at some point it does get overwhelming, especially when there's no certainty to any of those options at the time, or so it seems. And so, I mean, the cop out answer, I guess, would be as early as possible. Come up with all these options. Talk to everyone. But that's kind of like in high school, where they're giving you all these options and you're wondering
Yeah.
what best fits you. And so I
Mhm.
actually would say, go to, pursue your studies, the specialty that you're in, whether it be biochemistry, whether it be health sciences, biomedical engineering, whatever. And, go through it with a focus is is interesting to you. And if you find that there's perhaps some aspects of it that you don't like, then spend that time to reflect on what options about that field you don't like, and how can
Mhm.
other fields or um, topics or interests from other fields be integrated into what you know and your background skill sets, and
Yeah.
then grow that from there. I guess I would say a lot of times, um, the school system tries to narrow you to a focus.
Yeah.
And what's becoming this new trend, I find, is this interdisciplinarity or multidisciplinarity aspect, where you have one of your thought processes. So whether it be in science, you can mix it with business, you can mix it with engineering, and then you come up with something totally new and innovative. And you're wondering, how does that ever happen? Well, it's just talking to people who are not in your field, getting to know what they know, and see how you can converse with each other. And that's key to being flexible, not only to what you know and what your own skill sets are, but how you're interacting with others, so that in whatever field you decide to go to or adapt to or pivot to, you're going to be okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That sounds really good. And like what I think what I'm getting out of it is that you're very adaptable. It seems And I think that's like a key skill that any employers are looking for. So
Yes.
I think that's really great, and I hope that students, when they hear this, that they'll really take this on,
Yes.
and try to apply it, even like you said, as early as possible, even though school is very tough and it's very rough and you're super busy. I think you were already exploring space. Like I know I've known you since even before undergrad, and like even during undergrad you were doing so much space stuff. So I'm really glad to hear that that has really helped you and that didn't slow you down. In fact, I think it propelled you even more in your career. And then, you mentioned something about Chris Hadfield and that's saying, and I think that resonates a lot too with people maybe in athletes and whatnot too, because like I think oftentimes people, they think of the medal, they think of the winning that goal, but it's that journey that, like you said, that journey, all that hard work, like going to practice every day, going to all the meets and whatnot, building up to that moment. I think like athletes really like they really treasure those times. And I think that's what, when they get that medal, it's not because they get there, it's that all their hard work ends up there.
Exactly.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't too, but you know what? They really try their best. Um,
Yeah,
so,
you think about the times. I mean, I don't know how many people watch the Olympics this year, but the example of Simone Biles having, resigned herself from one of the competitions, she did that knowing that she was thinking about her journey to reach that point. It wasn't the point that mattered; it was the journey that
exactly.
mattered,
Yes.
and that is what I'm trying to convey as well. If you are okay and satisfied and happy with what you're doing along the way, no matter where you end up, you'll be happy about what you did.
So, it sounds like one of the things that you're really glad you did, looking back, is that you made all these options as you're applying for medical school. Is there any other things that you were really glad you did throughout during your journey in throughout this process?
I would say that, one of the cliche things is to never give up. Following, for me, it was the idea that, okay, if medical school doesn't work out, something else has to work out. And that is, if it wasn't going to be what I had envisioned it to be, then at least it should be something that I enjoy. And so I was following really my interest, and my interest at the time was space. And it wasn't the space that I thought it was. It was the space astronomy. It was looking up at the night sky and seeing all the planets and stars and galaxies and wondering, holy cow, how do all these questions get answered without humans heading that far into space? I mean, we've never landed on Jupiter, and yet we know so much more about it than we probably do of the Earth's ocean. Like, that's astounding to me. And it's the factor of being super curious and taking action on that curiosity that I was really glad to have done, because had it not been for that, I wouldn't have gotten out of my comfort zone to explore this field of space that is known to be so hard to get into in the first place. I often get asked, Linda, how'd you get into space? And looking
Yeah.
back, I don't know. It just started with one step at a time. If I had known the exact steps that I would take along the way, I probably don't think I would have done it. That's the thing. It was more just um, doing one small thing at a time and seeing where that led to, and then continuing that from there. So for me, it was okay. I like space. Let's look into it. Do some research. Found out that there's not many jobs in Canada in space, but didn't give up. Talk to people. Actually, I reached out to like around 100 people, strangers, who I thought were in space medicine, but they were just travel physicians. Physicians, that give you vaccinations
Yeah.
before you travel to overseas. They didn't reply to me. It was just one or two people that ended up replying that really changed my life, because they set me on a path where they said, Linda, attend this conference. Linda, apply to this. Linda, look into this resource. And so I did everything they said, and from there developed my own pathway and realized that when you get to a certain point where the path isn't really made for you anymore, so you're reaching the end of university, now you have to make your own path. There's so many possibilities that you can mold that pathway into exactly how you want it to go, how and the time that you want to take to
Yeah.
achieve that. I mean, that's what matters. That's what makes it fun and exciting because it's all tailored to
Mhm.
you. You're tailoring your own path at that point.
I really like that. And like for the our audience who don't know you, I just want them to know that like everything you've done, like since undergrad, like you have won multiple awards, you have
Oh,
gone positions that like no other people can get, and it's because you follow your passion, you went for it. And I think that's so important. And through that, and you could tell you loved it so much. And I think that makes a huge difference.
that's very
Um,
heartwarming to hear.
no, it's true. I'm sure once people look you up on LinkedIn or whatnot, they'll see it. But just for those who don't want to do that right away, but you guys should, you'll definitely see how much Linda has achieved, even without having gone to med school. And then if you see her application, or you'll see it, and you'll probably wonder, wow, how does someone like with this kind of application not get in? It's like, it kind of shows too, right? Like, there's a lot of different factors and stuff like that
Yeah,
involved.
you mentioned a truth to that. I've had actually a lot of physicians, experienced ones and new ones, tell me the exact same thing. They're like, how, if I were on the admissions committee, I'd probably admit you, but that goes to show that there are tons, thousands of extraneous factors that go into deciding whether a student is admitted or not. That is
Mhm.
beyond your control. That is beyond
Exactly.
your own application and your own personality, your own skill sets itself. And that's something to always keep in mind and not to um, become distressed or discouraged by that
Mhm.
rejection, but rather to realize that some things are out of your control. So focus on the
Exactly.
things that you can control, whether it
Mhm.
be improving your application, whether it be improving what you want to do in terms of figuring out your options, talking
Mhm.
to people, or just doing good for the world.
Yeah.
Like, super easy for me to say, but there's a lot of issues and problems in the world that you can start to tackle, and that's what really gets me motivated.
That's really good. And I hope that for those listening, they'll figure that out, or at least start exploring that and realizing there's so much more than just medicine.
Exactly.
And then hopefully if they get rejected, then they'll be able to explore those avenues. Now, let's flip back on the other side. Is there anything you wish you didn't do during your journey, or that now you're looking back like, maybe I should have done this, or in terms of getting to where you're at right now?
Yeah, that's a super good question. Having eventually made my own path as a student, it I found myself to be following a path that wasn't designed for me. So I'll give you an example. As a student, things move really fast. Your semester finished within 4 months. Your midterms are
Yeah,
probably next week. Your assignments are due tomorrow. You constantly have a deadline here,
yeah,
there, everywhere. Let alone your social life, if you have any. And then you're also applying for medical school, graduate school, or a job. And you're
yeah.
adding on additional tasks to a life that is already overwhelming and super busy, so many things to listen to. And so for me, that is what I had felt. I felt rushed to apply to medical school. I felt rushed that I had to do my MCAT within the summer period, or else I wouldn't have any opportunity to do it in the future. And what I would say is for the listeners here applying or having applied to medical school or any health school or graduate school in the past, you know, I know you're aware that the process is long and requires a lot of attention to detail, but plan everything out in advance. Talk to your colleagues and those who have already gone through the process to identify what steps need to be done through that long process so you already have an idea of how long it's going to take you, what you need to do, what the steps are involved, so you're not always scrambling towards a deadline. Instead, you know what you're doing and you can plan ahead for it, plan out the time that fits for you, and not for everyone else, right? If you go online, there's a lot of resources out there that helps you plan when you should take your MCAT according to what year you're in and what you need to do beforehand. But remember that everyone studies differently, everyone learns differently.
Yes,
So don't
exactly.
follow what is on the website just because it's there and everyone else is following. Follow your own path. Tailor that plan to how you are. You know, you may be working a part-time job, so consider that. You may be um, experiencing some other difficulties in your life that you have to include time buffers for, and mental buffers too. You know, mental health, as you mentioned before, Christine, is extremely important. You don't want to burn out. You don't want to be overwhelmed through the medical application process to the point where you become so discouraged to apply to even do anything after you apply to medical school. And I understand that it is overwhelming, but if you have a plan that is tailored to you, you know where to start and you know when to start.
Mm-hmm. And I really like that. And it reminds me of my own journey in getting into dental school. I remember sitting back and like thinking, okay, let's start from, I think I was in first year, and then I started planning from my fourth year what courses I would take. And I went backwards instead, because courses is definitely something, if you want to take a course, you need to have this prerequisite and blah, 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 and all that stuff. So I remember going backwards. And I think that's, I don't know who taught me that, but I just remember thinking that's how I planned out my ways, like planned out like my own journey in terms of dental school. And like you said, like taking the DAT at my own pace, and like taking the summer's courses that I took, or like into the job that I did. So I think it's super important, and that's a skill that anyone can start actually developing even in high school, I would say.
Right.
That they can start doing that. And I think that's something you only build better on as you get older, because you're, like you said, there's so many more other things in life. And like I think you mentioned too, buffer. I think that's so key. Like to whatever you plan, even if you know you can, like, get this amount of done, like job done in this amount of time, always add extra time, always add adjusting, because you never know. There's always things that happen in your personal life or in other lives, or like just anything. And I think that's super important for our listeners to know, to do that in their planning. Um,
Yeah, and you know the best that can happen is that you have more time for yourself.
exactly.
There's no downside to planning for buffer. And
Yeah.
I have to say, Christine, the main inspiration for coming up with all these options and thinking ahead was seeing you plan out your pathway to dental school. And you know, you about thinking your courses 2 years in advance, and for me, I was just thinking, you know, what's my next course going to be? And so having seen you do that was really inspiring to realize that planning ahead, even though it's an arduous task, it is
Yeah.
something that pays off in the long run.
Yes, definitely. Um, those are really, really great advice, and so I hope those listeners will get those and really apply it to this, because I definitely think it's applicable to anyone in any
Mhm.
situation. So now going back to, I guess, medical school, in terms of at what point did you stop, like decide, okay, I'm stopping, I'm not going forward? Because
Mhm.
you, when I watch you, and I've seen you do this so many times, when you reapply to me, it's like, wow, she never gives up. Like, I don't know how, it's like you said, it's a hard process. It's a very, not only is it draining time wise, but mentally, I find this application process super, super draining. And for you to continue, get back up and continue and do even better each application, it's very amazing and very aspiring. But you also called it quits at one point, and I think that's maybe a hard decision for you. But at the same time, I think that was the best decision for you. And
Mhm.
but how did you make that decision? At what point did you say, okay, you know what, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna pivot, and like totally stop this and pivot away?
I'll provide a quick answer to that, but also, you
Yeah.
know, follow it up with a description and an explanation for it. I didn't realize that I wanted to stop trying until this past year. So it's taken me since 2016 to 2021. What is that? 5 years? 5 years to realize that. and and to some people that's a long time. To others, it's a short time. But
Mhm.
you know, it really depends about how passionate you are, and it just all comes down to the question of asking yourself, do you want to be a physician? And I whenever someone asks me, why do you want to be a physician, or when I ask myself that, it took me some time to reflect on that answer. You know, I was always trying to ensure that I had the best answer out there. And oftentimes that best answer wasn't really tailored to actually what I wanted. So it was tailored to what I thought that the admissions committee would want to hear. And when I realized that, I started to understand that maybe the physician route isn't the best path for me to take. And so, is within the options that I had devised earlier, are one of those options better for me to take at this time that I can pursue and go forward with and pivot towards and, make more value from the time that I have in my career to continue growing rather than uh, continuing to pursue an admissions to medical school. And so, people always ask me, Linda, where do you see yourself in 5 years and 10 years? And that is a difficult question, always, even if you are planning ahead, because how can you really see the future, for one? But for two, the real answer is, you know, I always had trouble answering it because I had so many different options that I thought about. I saw it more as less of where exactly I saw myself, as in, I had to be in one place and that's it in 5 years or 10 years. It was more, what are all the possible options that I see myself doing as my next step that can reach towards who I want to become in 5 or 10 years? Like, do I want to be a leader? Do I want to be a manager? Do I want to work in a team setting? Do I want to help people using clinical skill sets? What is it that I wanted to do within now and 5 years? It wasn't just the one time stamp of a timeline, it was the whole duration that I saw as um, what I wanted to fulfill in that time. And so that's why it was super difficult to answer those questions. It was like, well, I don't know. There's so many different options. Where do you want me to start? But the idea behind this is once you have all those options, things will start to fall in line about um, where you're going to go next, as long as you take that
Yeah.
first step. And that first step could be any step. Because,
Mhm.
it is, don't think about it too much. Just keep going forward, keep continuing your pathway. And I did that, and I got to study space health and medicine abroad. I got to work at places I never thought I would ever work at, like Canadian Space Agency and NASA. Like, who would have thought? I wouldn't have thought that was just beyond dreams. And so, this past year, I asked myself, why do I want to be a physician? Generic answer, I want to help people. I want to fulfill my curiosity of figuring out what's wrong with the human body. Sometimes when you're sick, when you get all these different like diseases. And
Mhm.
then I thought, you know, if I could do research in any of those areas, that could contribute to that goal. If
Mhm.
I were to volunteer, that could contribute to that goal too. If I could study and work in global health, public health, or politics, that could also contribute to that goal.
Mhm.
And when I realized that all these options could do the similar impact that I wanted to achieve of why I wanted to be a physician, then
Mhm.
I told myself, then why not go for those options instead?
Mhm.
And within the time that I have, could I be spending another decade in medical school before I am able to make that impact? Or could I
Mhm.
now, in my current position working in government, be able to do that within the next 5 years? And so
Mhm.
all these factors, timelines, skill sets, my own strengths played a part into the decision of, okay, let's start to pivot a little bit.
Mhm.
And consider these options as potential realities. And so, in my case, I am now starting to look at consulting. And I find that this can help in the way that I want to help um, within the global health sector. I would say, actually, let's start small: the municipal health sector, and then the provincial, and then federal, and then global. But it's all small steps, and I find that that impact is what I want and what
Mhm.
I am going to achieve through consulting, which is what I could also achieve through medicine. Is
Mhm.
the difference is you know I didn't get accepted to medical school, but I
Mhm.
am in this position where I can create a similar impact. So why not just go for this simple, least energy of activation pathway
Yeah.
to get there? And
Yeah.
there really is no end to that impact that I want to create. A lot of people think,
Mhm.
oh, now that you're on the way to become a physician or a healthcare professional, you're set.
Mhm.
That's all there is to it. And
Mhm.
when you think of a defined point like that, and you're not thinking about what's next or the journey along the way, you start to look at things in different lenses where, perhaps that dream that you thought you wanted to be a physician, isn't exactly the dream for you. It might be the dream that how do I phrase this? The dream that you dreamt that was for you. If you
Yeah,
understand
maybe
that.
kind of molded in your mind, like people talking in your mind when you're a kid or whatnot.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's very difficult to discern the difference until you start exploring different pathways and figuring out what you like versus what it seems dreading to study or dreading to pursue the specific task. So it all comes down to continue to walk the path that you design for yourself, and the hardest part of that is to keep
Mhm.
going with the idea that you're still following your passion, you're still creating the impact you want to create, but perhaps not in the lens that you originally had designed for yourself.
Mhm. I really like that. And I think it's like what I'm hearing is like creating that mission, like making that, finding what your mission statement is almost.
Exactly.
And what you're saying, how when you wanted to go into the doctor, you want to help people, and like what you're doing now, you're still helping people. And I think you're not only helping people, but you're helping an even wider range of people.
Yes.
Because with consulting, you're not just one doctor now. What you do can affect multiple like organizations thing, like what they can do, and that has a huge impact. So that I remember when I was thinking of like public health and whatnot, like those are definitely factors I was considering in terms of like when doctor and stuff and public health and like how, like which ways to
Absolutely.
go and whatnot. So I could definitely, I think that's very very good for people to try to find out what their mission statement, but don't make it so um, specific. So
Hmm.
don't be like exactly I want to help people in this way, but maybe make it a bit broader,
Yeah.
but then allow for different avenues to reach that goal. I
That's
think that's
that's
that.
exactly it. That's super well articulated. It's now we're just diving into business here, which is but it's true. If you look at any company that is doing really well right now, their business or sorry, mission statement, it's broad, it's general, it's eye catching. It's, for example, going to the moon or going to Mars. Simple as that. And the way that you get there is not concrete or defined. It's
Exactly.
how you will build that
Hmm.
towards.
Yeah, and I think as long as you understand your own mission statement, then whatever path you do, whatever you choose to do, you will be able to enjoy it, and then
Yeah,
you won't regret it.
exactly.
And I think you don't regret your journey applying so many times. Do you regret it or? Yeah.
No,
So
absolutely not. I
nice.
learned so much each time, and
Mhm.
it's been a journey to for my own self awareness. I'll touch more on that later.
Yeah, yeah. So and like just like when you're talking about like looking forward and like the impact, it just reminded me of something I remember reading a long time ago about um, imagine yourself in your funeral, and then you're walking down that aisle, and then people start talking about, when they give the eulogies,
Yeah,
what do you want those people to say about you? And I think for me that has really shaped the way I try to, how I like try to help people, or how I try to do what I do and why I do what I do. And so I think what you're saying, it just totally reminds me of that. And I just want to remind that to let the viewers know too. I think that's a great way if they don't know how to start or where to start, maybe think of it like that and then build from there.
yeah,
Um,
no, that's a very interesting outlook. It's like thinking from the end and going back
yeah,
in time, planning ahead.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. I think this whole theme is about planning ahead, or at least planning something.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll take a break and we'll come back and I will reintroduce.